Hi, welcome if you're just joining us. Apologies for the delay. We're just having a few problems with one of our speakers with the internet. Keeps freezing, so we hope it's going to sort itself out in a second.
Hello everyone, I hope this is going to work. Please bear with us. And I'm very happy that I can see Selma and I can hear you and see you. So that's wonderful.
Oh, that's good.
That's good news. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to welcome everyone very warmly to the AJR Book Club today. Our guest today is Selma van der Perre, born 1922 in Amsterdam, whose book, My Name Is Selma, is coming out in the UK in 10 days on the 17th of September. My name is Bea Lewkowicz and I'm the director of the AJR Refugee Voices archive. I was very privileged to interview Selma in her garden a few weeks ago for our archive. And in fact, it was our first proper garden, socially distant interview. And after listening to Selma for quite a few hours and finding out that her book was coming out in September, I thought it'd be wonderful to host a Zoom session with her. She agreed, and here we are. And thank you, Gabi Glassman, who I see here as well, for making the contact with Selma. In fact, we're very lucky that Selma is with us today, as the BBC wanted to film her today and she put them off for tomorrow. So thank you, Selma, for sticking with the AJR here for today.
You're welcome.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate Selma on her amazing book. I've just finished reading it and it's truly inspiring and full of detailed memories of her experiences as a Jewish young woman in Holland under German occupation, in hiding, as a member of a Dutch resistance group, as a prisoner, first in the Dutch concentration camp of Vught and then in the German concentration camp Ravensbrück. Selma's book came out in Holland in January 2020 and was on the bestseller list for many weeks, and now has been translated to many languages. It is listed at number 6 on the Amazon list of new releases. I'd like to start by talking about the creation of the book, and then we'll proceed to Selma's biography. If we have time for questions at the end, please send your questions in the chat, and hopefully we can then pose the questions to Selma. At the moment, you're all muted because that's easier for us. So, Selma, I'm going to ask you a few questions about the book and the production of the book. Can you please tell us what motivated you to write the book 75 years after liberation? And also tell us how difficult it was to find a publisher.
Well, in the beginning, I didn't want to publish it because I thought there were so many books written about the Holocaust, so mine wouldn't be needed. But when I found out, when I went to painting classes or met other people in England, and I found out that they didn't know anything about the Dutch resistance. They knew a lot about France, because also the films and so, but the Dutch resistance, nobody thought that there was any resistance in Holland. And also they didn't know anything about Ravensbrück, and that it was a female concentration camp for non-Jewish people. And so I thought it would be necessary to write about that. And so my nephews also, who lived in England, both my brothers were in England, and they said, oh, you must write it down. You're the last one of the generation in that generation. So I wrote a few notes down to start off. But when I noticed that English people didn't know anything about it, I thought, well, I ought to write about it. That's how I started.
And how long did it take you?
And then I had difficulties of publishing, yes. Well, I didn't try very much, mind you. I didn't send it to publishers very much. It was my fault as well. I was so busy living. My life was so busy that I really didn't have time. And I couldn't write in the evening because then I wouldn't sleep. So I put it off for a long time. Every time wrote a little bit or a few notes and then put it off again and said, yes, I will do it in the Christmas holidays. I was still teaching and having evening classes with the Dutch for the Dutch. English people wanted to learn Dutch. And my husband was a journalist and we were very fully occupied going out in the evenings too to first nights and painting exhibitions and things like that. So I was a very busy woman, didn't have really time to write until this happened in the painting class. And the teacher said, when I said, I won't come here this next week because I have to go to Holland. Oh, they said, how nice, lovely, have a lovely holiday. So I said, well, it's not a holiday really, because by that time, you see, I had been asked to give lectures. So when I was going not to come to the classes, they said, oh, have a very nice holiday. And I said, well, it's not really a holiday. So they wanted to know what it was. So I told them they'd never heard of Ravensbrück, nor had they heard of the Dutch resistance at all. And certainly not of non-Jewish people in the resistance as well.
So
And,
when you submitted it to an English publisher, what response did you get when you submitted the manuscript first?
oh, I hardly did, actually. They just sent, they didn't want it, they sent it back. And then I offered it to a Dutch one, and they didn't want it either. They said, oh no, we don't want it in English. I wrote it in English, you see, because I wanted it to be written for the English people, not for the Dutch. I thought they knew enough. So I wrote it in English, and the Dutch said, oh no, we can't do it in English. And so I left it, and then 2 years afterwards, in 2018 or 16, a friend said, oh, you must publish it, you know, it's very good, because I had the script, of course, the manuscript. And so she talked to the publisher again, the one who's now published it, and he was he read it, and he said, well, we translate it into Dutch and publish it in Dutch. And I couldn't translate it because my Dutch, I speak it all right, but I can't write it properly anymore. To write a book, you need a good literary thing. And so he took it on, and when he'd read it, he said how sorry he was that he the first time refused it. And of course, it's been very successful in Holland. And he keeps saying how sorry he was and is that they didn't do it before. Because I'm very pleased the way it went. You see, it went top of the booksellers list for several weeks, and then in the booksellers list for another several weeks.
Selma, can I ask you something? Because in the English version of the book, there is at the end there is a note from the translators. Because of course you wrote it in English. Then it was translated into Dutch, and then it was translated back into English.
Not,
so my question is, how different is this, the finished version, from your original manuscript?
Not very much, but it is, of course, yes. But not very much, because I had written much more. I had written more in it. But the English, but because I explained to the Dutch, to the English, what Dutch things meant, you know, when in the story, and they cut out most of the names as well, and so it's had mentioned, and that is all the difference actually.
Okay.
And they changed it around as well. I mean, you know,
the picture. Yeah. I just showed this.
The picture, but also the way the chapters. Were changed around. That actually in the beginning somebody from the publishers told me in the beginning it would be better, because I have a niece, or actually it's the niece of my sister-in-law, and she is with a publisher as well, not with this one but another, and she had taken on the book, and she said, oh, it would be all right if we change it around. So that's what happened actually.
And Selma, are you surprised by the success of the book?
Completely. I am unbelievably surprised. I couldn't believe it. I really couldn't. And I still can't. And the emails I get from people who have read it are so marvelous, you know. I didn't realize it made such an impression on people. Emotionally and physically.
Okay.
I'm surprised about every email I get from people who've read it.
Well, I'm sure there are going to be many, many more emails once the English version is out, which opens you to a much broader market.
They're very welcome.
Selma, let's talk now about some of the things you cover in your book. We're going to just do it as a snapshot because obviously we can't cover everything, and we hope that everyone here is going to go to Amazon and buy a copy of your book. So I've prepared some photos. So I'm just going to, they're from your book. I'm just going to screen share them.
Yes, some photos had come already through in the beginning when I opened it.
Yeah, 1 second, I'm in the wrong.
And this is,
So
this is my family. My mother on the left, my father in the center, and my elder brother, Louis, standing. My younger brother, 2 years younger than Louis, is lying on the ground. And I'm standing, I must have been about 5.
yes, and tell us a little bit about your parents, Baron Velleman and Femmetje Neespier.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Well, yes, my father was an artist, a comedian and singer. And my mother was from a well-known Jewish family in Alkmaar. My father was born in Schagen, and the family came from Alkmaar too. And my father was originally thought, because he was brought up by his grandparents who were very religious and wanted him to become a rabbi or a chassan. But he didn't want to, he wanted to go on the stage. So in the end, he was allowed to go on the stage. And my mother fell in love with him because his grandparents and my mother's parents used to play cards together, and that's how they met. My mother used to pour out the tea. And they met and they were very much in love. And they married in 1911, March 1911. And my brother Louis was born in December, just the day after Christmas, 29th of December, 1911. And David, the younger one, 2 years younger, was born in 1913. So David is 11 years older than me, and Louis is 13 years older than me. Mm-hmm. And I was born in 1922, and so quite a long time after David.
Mm-hmm.
My father was, when we were living in Amsterdam, my father was, when I was born, my father said to my mother, take the children to the seaside. It will be much better for them to live there, healthier. And so I spent the first 4 years of my life in Zandvoort, which is the seaside town of Amsterdam.
And can I just interrupt? Sorry to interrupt you, but we don't have that much time. I wanted to ask you, in your book, you write that sometimes you lived in prosperity and sometimes in real poverty.
Because my father was on the stage, he didn't always have a job. And it was not like it is now that you have agents and everything. That was not in those days. And so while I was born, he was traveling Europe, and we were very well off. But when he came back, we very soon lost whatever there was for money, and we were poor again. We had well-to-do years, and we had very poor years, in fact, very up and down.
And tell us about the picture in the middle, because that's connected to the Luna Park.
Yes, my father had organized a Luna Park. There was a Luna Park in America, but never in Europe. And this was the first one he had organized. And this was taken there, my mother on the left, and then my little sister, who was born 6 years after me, in 1928, Clara. And then there's a good friend of ours, of mine, Jopie Kropveld. the Jewish father. And then I was on the right, standing there with a bow in my hair.
It's a lovely picture.
Yes, yes.
Okay, there's much more in the book, so I think we need to move on.
That is.
One second, Selma, Selma, 1 second. Let me just introduce you, not everyone knows. So Holland was occupied by the German army on the 10th of May, 1940, and the Dutch forces surrendered on the 15th of May. So my question to you is, how did life change for you? And
well, in the beginning, the first year, nothing changed very much because, except that my brothers were, one was in the Navy, commercial Navy, merchant Navy, and the other one, the younger one, was a soldier. And so we were very worried what had happened to them because, you know, we thought they may be in German hands, but they weren't, luckily. And this is a photograph in my Aunt Sarah's garden in Amsterdam in 1941, still.
And is this the last picture of all of you together?
Yeah. Well, of the four of us together, yeah.
Yeah,
not
the
my
four
brother.
of you.
Yeah, yeah.
And tell us a little bit, how did your personal life change after the occupation?
Well, in the beginning, I was still at school in the beginning, and had to do exams. And when I started to look for a job, I couldn't because all the Jewish firms were taken over. And if there were a few still, they weren't allowed to do very much. And you weren't allowed to work for non-Jewish firms. So that was very difficult. I started a job first, and my father didn't like it once I'd been one day because it was filters in cigarettes, and he said no. And he found me a job as a model and secretary for a fashion house, a German immigrant who had opened a fashion house. Because of course we had, since 1936 in Holland, we had received masses of the German and Austrian Jewish refugees. And I did that, but it was then in Holland. There came the law that you weren't allowed to use any more transport. So you had to walk everything, and then Jews were not allowed to go into cinemas anymore, and swimming pools and parks and lots of other restrictions. So life became very difficult. And I had to walk all the way to this fashion house, which was on the other side of town. So I looked for another job, which was a very nice firm, a paper firm near my house, 10 minutes walk. And that was very lucky because in 1942, I got my call up to go to East Europe to work. We still thought it was all work camps. We didn't know it was annihilation camp. And when I got my call up, the first time my father said ill. So I was ill. He gave me some chocolate to eat with stuff in it, which made me go to the loo. And then I could only be a week ill. And then I put on a nurse's uniform and went back to the office again, but they said I couldn't do it. So I went to my job, the paper firm, to tell the people that I couldn't come. And they were talking to a neighbor who was a German refugee, and we had a fur factory. And he said, why don't you come to my factory? And then you're free, you don't need to go to East Europe. And that's what I did. So I learned to make fur things, mittens and things for the German soldiers who had to go to the East Front. So that's how I saved, in the beginning, my life, actually. Or he saved my life.
But then, Selma, tell us in the middle photo here,
The other photograph.
We can see you when you're in hiding. And when I did your interview and we did the photos, I was amazed how different you look in this photo in hiding. You're the second person from the picture of the family pictures. And there's
the only girl there. Yeah.
So tell us what happened to you and how
this was in Leiden.
Circumstances were. Yeah.
I went first after several hiding families. I was taken to Leiden in the end, and there was a doctors group who were already in the resistance. It was a very good resistance group. And this our single, and this is next door by, oh dear, by next door by the hospital, the landlady. And I think it might have been my birthday, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be surprised. And in 1943, maybe, I don't know, there's a party. The boy on the left is a Jewish boy, but I didn't know that. She said it was her nephew, actually. And the boy on the right-hand side is a Catholic boy, because by that time, all Dutch boys and men were called up to go to work in Germany, unless they went to university. But if they wanted to go to university, they had to sign a loyalty letter. And if they didn't want to do that, because they didn't want the German to be loyal to the Germans, they went into hiding too. So a lot of non-Jewish boys were also into hiding by that time. But this photograph was in a book about Leiden, the Jews in Leiden, and my cousin showed that book to me. And she said, oh, I said, oh, that's me. So there had been an exhibition in Leiden of the Jewish people who had lived there, and therefore the exhibition had a huge photograph, this photograph, but very big like that. And so I said, it's me. And I wrote to the man who organized the exhibition, and he sent me the thing, the poster. That was very nice, yeah. The things I experienced because of the book, you know.
And you had, tell us, because you told me in the interview, what did you do to your hair? Because you looked so different.
Oh yeah, well, I had to blonde it, of course, yeah, dyed. My uncle Jacques had a brother who was mixed married and who had a hair salon, and he did my hair.
Selma, I want to ask you, you joined the Dutch resistance, and you know, by that you put yourself at a great risk. How did you feel at the time, and what made you really join the resistance?
Well, I just wanted to help. And so many non-Jewish people were doing resistance work and helping Jews and so, that I felt that I wanted to help as well. So when they said they were very short of young people to help, especially women, girls, I said, can I help? And I didn't know what it was going to be. And they said yes. And in the beginning, I was just putting illegal papers in envelopes, you know, and spread. But quite soon, of course, I had to do other things like taking papers to addresses and so, and meetings and suitcases full of illegal papers. Because by that time they weren't allowed to have any newspapers printed anymore. The only one was the Telegraph, I think. Yeah.
And Selma, what?
So we had a lot of papers printed, but they weren't allowed to be sent normally, you know.
But what papers did you have? What was your name?
Oh, my own papers. Well, when I was living in Leiden first, I got the name of the girl whose room I had, who had come back to America with the last boat, and she was called Jill Will Buter. Sorry, I'm forgetting the name. When you get as old as I am, you forget things.
You're excused.
Will,
My question to you, Selma, tell us a little bit about your missions and one of the more dangerous missions. And I'm thinking of your trip to Paris. Tell us a little bit.
yeah, well, by that time I was, the resistance movement had found me a room in Utrecht, because Utrecht is the center of Holland and all the trains go through it. So they thought, because I was traveling by that time from north to south through the whole of Holland, it was better to live there. And I traveled with suitcases full of illegal newspapers, therefore, or envelopes, or these notices, or meetings. And one day, well, I visited lots of people who were in hiding as well, because they needed money, and they needed, the hosts needed ration cards because of the food and so. And people needed identity cards, new ones. If they were in hiding, they wanted another different name. So I had to arrange all that. And then one day I was asked to go to Paris, and I said to my boss, because we were a little group within the larger group every time you were, so that you couldn't tell all the people's names, in case you were arrested. And I was asked to go to Paris with an envelope and collect an envelope there. And I did say, I think it's much too dangerous, but they needed it very much to get boys out of prison. So I went, but there was a German and Austrian group of Jewish refugees, boys and girls, who had come to Holland since 1936 to learn to be a pioneer, to go to Israel, well, Palestine in those days. And they were very, very much involved with us in the resistance. And this was in 1944, and I was asked to go to Paris, and they had, these German boys had opened up routes over the borders, because you couldn't go and travel, of course, in those days at all. So we had to go secretly over the borders. And they had found farmers who received. So I went to the farm, took the train to the border, to the town near the border, and then walked to the farmer. And the next morning, very early, he got me over the border. Don't forget that some of these farms join the borders, and there was not an official border. You couldn't go over an official border, of course. You had to go over the secret border. And that's what I did to the farmer they had recommended. And then on the other side, once I was in Belgium, I took a train to the other border and went to the farmer there, whom they had told me about, and stayed with the farmer, and his son helped me over their border on the farm. And then I took the train to Paris. And I was rather afraid, and I was quite nervous actually, but I just smiled to everybody. And I went to the office I was told to go to, and there asked for the man whose name I was supposed to say. I was not supposed, I was saying. And he came, he knew I was coming, and he came very quickly down and gave me his envelope, and out I went. And I went quickly back to the train, changed all my clothes, which I had taken off. And in case they were doing it, and then took the trains and buses back again over the borders, the way I had come, and went back to Holland and gave my envelope to my boss.
And what happened to the boys in prison, to the two
Well,
men?
they were taken out, that's right, they were rescued. I did that once before with an Austrian officer. They needed German stamps, that was still quite a while ago, and they needed German letters and stamps, and I got that out of the man's pocket jacket, and they used that, and they got the boys out of prison. Yeah, that's how they got people out of, even out of Ravensbrück, the Jewish camp there. They got people out of that with German papers.
Mm.
And the German boys and girls were very good at that because they spoke perfect German, of course, and they did as if they were one of the Germans.
Mm.
They did a marvelous job. And most of them are not in life anymore, of course, because they were arrested and they were killed.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important that I wrote that book, I think.
Absolutely. But you were arrested in July.
I wasn't betrayed, though. I mean, people write that I was betrayed, but that's not true. I was not betrayed. My boss was caught in the train, and he was taken to his room by the SS. And unhappily, I was just there because another resistance worker had promised to make me secret places in bookshelves because I had so many papers in a suitcase under my bed, which was very dangerous. And so he promised to make me bookshelves with secret places. And just that day, you won't believe it, but just that day, another resistance worker came with the bookshelves and said, "I've got your shelves." And I bring them to Pete's room. And he was just showing me how it worked when we heard the door open downstairs. And I looked down and I thought, oh, there's the boss. And there he was between two Grüne Polizei, arrested in the train. And so we were arrested too, just bad luck.
But what did you say to them, who you were? What did you say to the police?
Well, I had my name, Margarethe van der Kuit, which was given to me by the resistance. I was the first person to, as a guinea pig, they asked me, would I mind getting a real papers and so. So they got from the council, where we had, by that time, in 43, 44, we had people working with us in the resistance, for the resistance, and they were working in the archives and in the town halls, and they gave, the resistance had taken on to get some of those identity cards, new ones, and they got one from me. And the girl, it was the name of the little baby who died when she was very young, and she was called Margarethe van der Kuit, Marga for short. And so I was given the name Margarethe van der Kuit. And with that new identity card, completely new identity card, a real one, they put my name as Margarethe van der Kuit in the archive, in the registration of people. And I had to go with that one to get some vouchers for shoes and clothes and so, and ration cards, and it all worked perfectly all right. So
Selma, when they arrested you, what did you tell them? How were you related to the man they arrested?
Oh, I said I was the girlfriend only, and they said so too. We had arranged that, if anything like that would happen, that I was just a girlfriend. And the two Grüne Polizei believed it. But when we came, I was arrested and put in prison the first night in Utrecht. And the guard there, the female guard, said, "Have you got a diary with you?" I said, "Yes." She said, "Tear it up and put it through the loo, through the toilet." So I said, "There's nothing in it." She said, "They always find something." And of course, I'd had to do that. And then the next day, I was taken to Amsterdam to the famous, or infamous really, the Terpenstraat, where the SD had its headquarters, and people were badly treated and interviewed. And I was interviewed there as well. And then taken to the prison in Amsterdam, in a cell, and I was interviewed for several days. And he asked me then, "Why did you blonde your hair, you know, dyed your hair?" And I said, "Well, there's nothing else you can do, a woman can do. It's the only thing you can do as a girl." And they believed it. But when we arrived in the Terpenstraat, in the car, a German car, I was between two very fat Germans, Gestapo Germans. And when I got out of the car, there was a man standing on top of the steps. It was an old lyceum, and it was taken over by the Germans, Gestapo, and made the headquarters there. And the man said, standing on the top, and it turned out to be the director, the head of the Gestapo in Holland, Lagers. And he said, "What is that?" And the man with me, driving me to Amsterdam, said, "Oh, the girl has nothing to do with it." And he said, and I felt very good, I thought, "Oh, that's fine." But he said, "I don't believe it." And I thought, "Oh my God." So, but then they took me inside and put me in a big chair. And there were on the right-hand side lots of men writing, and on the left there were girls with typing, several girls with typewriters. And I just smiled at all of them because I kept on smiling as if nothing was the matter. But they took my hand back and I was scared. I thought, "No, this is it. I've got it. I've been." Because I thought control in a train or in the street is quite different from controlling, checking on the headquarters. They may have machines where they find out that things are not right, you know. Because I wasn't sure if my papers were right, but they turned out to be perfectly right. So thanks to the resistance movement for doing that.
And Selma, you were arrested. You were first sent to a Dutch concentration camp.
Yes,
and then one second, and then you were sent to Ravensbrück. And I want to just share this screen again, and I'd like you to tell us, please, about this document here on the right. If you can tell us.
I have no. Oh, here. No, yeah. I have no document.
No, it's what you wrote when you were on the train to Ravensbrück. You managed to get a note out.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us the story, please.
To Greet. Yeah, to my friend Greet Brinkhuis. Yeah.
Yes, please tell us about it.
Well, we were traveling in cattle wagons from Vught, the south of Holland, to Ravensbrück in Germany, northeast Germany. And I was with women who had been in the kitchen, working in the kitchen, and they had several things, and also loo toilet rolls. And I got a piece of paper and a pencil and wrote a note to Greet, my Dutch friend in Amsterdam, and put it through an opening between the wooden planks of the wagon, and saying that I thought we were on our way to Germany, and keep very well. And the letter is in the book, in my book.
How did that letter survive? What happened to it?
Well, we both had forgotten about it, actually. And then my friend moved a few years before she died in 2003, and found a letter in a box, because she had to hide it, of course. Everything of Jews had to be hidden, otherwise they would have been sent to concentration camp. And she found it, and she sent it to me. And it was unbelievable, because it was found by what we think was the headman of the station master, and he sent it, Mr. Soete, and he sent it to Greet because I put the address on it, and he put it in an envelope and sent it to Greet, and she kept it all those years. And then we had it, so I've got it still, yeah.
Did you expect that it would arrive somewhere when you wrote the note?
No, not really, no. It was just a piece of blue paper, toilet paper. Very small. I hoped it might, but I didn't think.
Now, you, Selma, you arrived in Ravensbrück in September 44, and I think you have very vivid descriptions of Ravensbrück, which I think people should read in the book. We can't cover it today, yeah. But of course, to say Ravensbrück was located 90 kilometers north of Berlin. There were about 132,000 women in there, only 20,000 Jewish, as you said before. And the main thing, you were there as a political prisoner. Nobody knew you were Jewish. No. Is that correct?
The Jewish people, most of them were sent on to Auschwitz from Ravensbrück. When we arrived, there weren't very many Jews left anymore. Just one.
Yes, and you obviously, you suffered horrendous conditions, but you were very, very lucky that you were one of, in my research, 500 prisoners who were taken out of Ravensbrück by the Swedish Red Cross in April 45. And
about 190 Dutch and Belgians.
Right.
First the Norwegians were rescued, and then the French, and then the Dutch and Belgians at the end of April 1945. Well, not the end, 23rd of April 1945. So we gave the commemoration always in Holland on the 23rd of April.
And this was before they started the death march from...
Yeah, oh, yes. The death march was started the week after, the end of April. And the Russians came in and liberated Ravensbrück on the 30th of April, 3-0. Yeah. So just a few days before, they were going on the death march, yeah.
And you were taken to Sweden.
Yeah.
And here's a picture on the left when you arrived in Sweden. And once in Sweden, you revealed your real name, and which led, I guess, to the title of the book. Can you tell us that story, please?
Well, when we arrived in Sweden, we had to give our name. There was a Dutch chap from the legation sitting behind the table, and we had to give our name. So I gave Margarethe van der Kuit. And then we all went to our, they had opened museum and the big halls, and they put mattresses down there, and straw mattresses. And so everybody went to lie down there to sleep. But I couldn't. I thought I went back to the man. He was luckily still there, and said, "Where does this list with name go to? Does it go to Holland?" And he said, "No, Holland is still occupied." And so I said, "Well," he said, "No, it goes to England." I said, "But England is still at war." "Yes," he said, "but it goes with diplomatic post." "Why?" So I said, "Well," and I didn't dare say it for a long time. I was really hesitating, didn't dare say my real name. But then I said, "Well, really, my name is actually Selma Velleman. My name is actually Selma." And that's why we chose it for the book. But I was very scared to give my name as a Jewish person. And then, because none of my friends, I had many friends therefore, and none of my friends knew I was Jewish. And then we were taken to a camp because the war was still on, and but very well treated in the camp itself as well. And we had 2 dinners, one at 6 o'clock and one at 7. And one evening I was at 7 o'clock, and a man standing on the stage said, "Is there a Selma Velleman here?" and nobody had answered the first dinner, and nobody answered there. And I stood up and I said, yes, that's me. And my friends were so surprised. They said they never thought of it.
Yeah. And Selma, then in 1945, you were asked to come on the picture on the right here. You were asked to come to London to work for the Dutch government in exile, where you were also reunited with your brothers. And in the book, you described that this was not an easy time, as you had to come to terms with the death of your father, who was killed in Auschwitz in 42, and your mother and sister were killed in Sobibor in 43.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, what helped you personally to build up a new life at that point?
Well, I
in London,
built
sorry.
up the days. Sorry?
And here's a picture of you coming to London, right? The bottom one.
Well, I haven't got it, but I know what you mean, yeah.
So my question is, what helped you to build up a new life?
Well, I kept very busy. I started studying, although I was working at the BBC. After the Dutch government, I left quite soon because we were training officers to go to Indonesia, to Dutch Indies, to fight against the independence. And I took on a job with the BBC. And I was studying at the same time. So I was really occupied the whole day. And that helped me. And then I met my husband at the BBC, and he helped me a lot as well. But the first 5 years were very, very, very difficult. Also because my brothers had their own lives, really. And you know, I had been busy during the war so much. And also in Sweden, I'd been busy because I helped the legation in Sweden with the people who came from the concentration camps and needed help. And the ambassador had asked me to come and help at the legation and the embassy in Stockholm. So I was always busy. And there I was in London with hardly anything to do, because the job they made for me was very nice, but I had hardly anything to do with it, for it. So they must have done that to please me. I mean, you know, but it wasn't a very good idea because I needed occupation, and I needed a family, and of course I didn't have a family, and I suddenly missed my family. It suddenly all came to me that I was all alone. People asked me to stay, special friends from the camp from Ravensbrück asked me to stay, and I did, but I always felt too much. You know, I felt I was too much. I shouldn't stay too long. And I had the same feeling here in London. My younger brother went to his fiancée in Birmingham, and my older brother was still sailing in his job. So I didn't have a family, really.
Yeah, I think this is very powerful in your book, and in a way you capture this situation for many, you know, young survivors and refugees who post-war didn't have parents.
Yeah.
You know, I think it comes across very strongly.
When I went to Holland in the beginning, I felt it also very much. I suddenly felt very Jewish too, which I had never done before, you know, because I felt suddenly, I felt I was a stranger, an alien in the Netherlands, in Holland.
Why did you feel that so much after the war?
Well, because I didn't have a family anymore. I have, you know, and things were very difficult in Holland. You know, there was a lot of fascism still there. People who had been pro-German during the war, we're still not all that, we're still like that, even when the war was finished.
Mm.
And there was, and the ministries and the official offices were still mounted by people who had been bad during the war, actually.
Yeah. Selma, you married in 1955. You had a son in 1957. You became a teacher and later foreign correspondent for Dutch television station. You received the Dutch Resistance Memorial, the Memorial Cross in '83. And up to date, you play bridge and golf and you like to travel. And you turned 98 in June. So of course I need to ask you the most important question is—
I can't travel anymore though.
Okay.
Especially with the virus.
Okay, but even without that, can you tell us what is your secret?
Well, I think one has to be very active. I try to keep my mind active and also my body. Body active is very difficult now, very, very difficult. But I try to do it. And especially I think you have to be mentally active. I try to keep that. I do countdown on the television if I'm in between 2 and 3, which is very good, you know, for my English and for my math, because I was a math teacher. So I don't know if you've ever looked at it. It's very good.
Okay.
It's, with letters, you have to find words. Bigger words. Well, I can never. I'm pleased if I have a word with 5 or 6 letters, you know. But
Okay.
they do with 8 or 9. But the math I usually can do, even if they can't do them, I can do the math. So I'm very pleased still. Keeps my mind busy, you see.
Okay, that's good advice. But I also wanted to ask you, you were involved in the Museum und Gedenkstätte in Ravensbrück when you speak to teachers and students. And what I wanted to ask you, what is your main message to them? And also, do you have a special message for us on managing COVID-19 situation?
Well, that's a very difficult question because to manage COVID-19 is very, very difficult. I'm very sorry it happened, and I'm trying to be very careful, actually. I haven't been out very much. I won't be out today either, no. But I think you have to be very careful. And I do think that the young people now, and other people too, that they're not careful enough. They're not wearing their masks, and I think that's very important. People think it's all over, but it isn't. I mean, this last few days, it's been increased again here in England. So I think it's very dangerous. You should be very, very careful.
And Selma, what do you tell the teachers who you speak to in Ravensbrück?
Well, I just had a phone call actually from Ravensbrück to ask, because they're having an exhibition again, and they wanted me to interview me on Zoom. They thought I couldn't come over, and I said no, quite right. But well, what I tell them is that I think to tell my story is very important, because I think we all don't want it to happen again. And not to happen again is possible if we all are aware of the fact. And we don't have to, if we don't quarrel too quickly and so often, if we don't hate people, don't envy people, try to be tolerant. I know it's very difficult, but I think even in small groups, try not to fight so quickly. Because from fights come big fights, and from big fights come war times. May come, at least. So I think really, you know, one should tolerate, show more tolerance. Put yourself in the other person's shoes. If you have, you can have an argument, of course, or certainly discussions, but try to be tolerant with the other person. Try to to understand their point of view. I think it's very important.
I think it's a great message. I would like to, if questions are coming in, I want to thank you, first of all, for managing these technical difficulties and joining us today. And if there are any questions, please use the chat. In the meantime, I actually have one thing I just want to talk about is, do you feel at all that the Jews who put themselves at risk, like yourselves, to save people, should be acknowledged similarly to the righteous Gentiles? Because this is a topic which has come up in some of our Refugee Voices interviews.
Really?
Yes, because,
Yes, I've said that as well, and that's why I'm glad the book is published, because you see, I keep saying that when people say, oh, well, the Jews went as lambs. Well, in a way they did, because Germany was very, very clever with their stories. I mean, they didn't say that they were killing people in the East. But I think that, sorry, yeah.
No, so I think that's definitely something which, needs to be.
I think that so many Jewish people also were in the resistance. But as I said before, they didn't come out because they were killed so much quicker. I mean, the man, for instance, who saved hundreds of children in Amsterdam, he was German, and but his wife and daughter were killed, and he was killed in the end as well. And I know several of that group I was talking about, the Westerwelle group, it's called in Holland, because Joop Westerwelle started it. He was a Dutch chap. And but these were the boys and girls from Ravensbruck, and there are a few that survived. They were lucky. They were caught in 1944 at the end of the war and in France, and the Germans didn't have time to kill them, sent them to prison, and they were liberated by the English, Americans, and Russians. But most of the ones who were arrested were killed, and so you don't hear their stories.
So that's why your book is even more important.
I think so, yes.
And I'm sure everyone who will read it will find the same. As I said, I couldn't put it down. Although I interviewed you some weeks ago, I knew your story. I was lucky enough, you gave me the book on Saturday, and it's a must read. I couldn't put it down. I had to finish it. So I can really wholeheartedly recommend it to anyone.
I've had a few questions through.
Okay, let's do the questions.
So, hi Selma, I'm Susan Harrod. I'm just going to ask you the questions which have come through the chat facility. So, first of all, I've had lots of messages saying thank you. What an amazing story, and what an amazing person you are. Lots of those. And then I've had a question, how do you stay calm with all the media attention that's going on with the launch of your book?
Well, I have to stay calm. I'm very surprised of all the interest in it, actually. And I've been very busy these last few days, last few weeks, for the last few months. But I'm getting used to it, It's like during the war, too. People say, how could you do it? But in the end, it becomes a job. I mean, if you go to an office, you go every day to do a job, don't you? And everything you do really becomes, in the end, a job. Okay. I think.
I've been asked if you spoke German fluently.
I used to, yes, not now anymore.
Okay.
I speak it still, of course. I mean, and I certainly can read it. But I used to speak it fluently, yes. I had to. In Germany, in Ravensbruck.
Yeah, that's...
I had this job at Siemens, and I had to speak German.
Okay.
Actually, most people had to understand German, really.
Okay.
Because all the orders were in German.
You were forced labourer for Siemens.
Yeah.
In Ravensbruck, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to hand back to you, Bea. I'm just inundated with messages from everyone saying thank you and how much they've enjoyed listening to you and how much they admire you. So I'm going to hand back to Bea to wrap up now.
I just want to say really thank you, Selma, for participating. Thank you for writing your book. I'm sure you'll be very, very busy in the next few weeks. We were lucky to have you. And, you know, also if your photographs and your story is going to be on our website as well, AJR Refugee Voices. .org.uk, so please come and visit that. And just to say good luck with your book and good luck with the many other translations coming out in the next few months.
I just had a lot of bells going at the door as well, and the phone. Thank you.
Okay, so I think people, yeah, just a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I hope it was all right.
It was wonderful, and we
sorry we had the trouble with now also not being connected. Hello?
Yes,
Hello.
Connected.
We're not connected, really. We connected
Here's the book.
orally, but not the photographs.
Okay. So, okay, thank you, everyone, and
thank you.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.